And we're back with another episode of Respect the Line. It's a very special episode for Taylor and I. You got host Matthew Taylor, Danny Catullo. It's our first podcast with guests. We had to reach long and far, go out to Rome, New York, to be able to bring these two guys onto the podcast. We found a couple legends. Taylor, why don't you introduce our guests?
We got Paul Lewis the third, correct?
Got it.
Paul Lewis the third and Nick Scerra. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys are from Rome? Is that where you claim is Rome?
I grew up in Rome, but ever since I've been 18, I don't live in Rome anymore. So everybody associates me with Rome, which is fine. But I actually live in Mechanicsville, New York, which is about an hour and 40 minutes from Rome now.
Sweet. Same with you, Paul?
Yeah, so I grew up in this area just outside of Rome. I've moved away several times for college and different things, but ended up back here. So yeah, I'm just outside of Rome these days.
Nice. So we got Paul Lewis the third and Nick Scerra on. Love it, dude. Love it. So we've done a few episodes already. It's been very free form. We've kind of just talked a bunch of shit. Brought some topics to the table, talked about them, etc. But since you guys are on, though, I don't know much about you guys. I mean, I do, but I want to hear a little bit about, it was funny. We just looked back at some past winners in some of the big tournaments. You guys have some big major wins, right? Can you tell us about those?
Nick, you've got a few more. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the biggest one was my first World Series win. That was back in 2003. And we went a great run, 5 years in a row, two first, two thirds, and a second. So we had a nice little run there. But 2003 was my first big World Series win. I've won it 3 times, seconds a couple times, thirds a couple times, and then Wycliffe a couple years ago with Paul. Unfortunately, Paul, that's the one tournament he wants so bad, and he hasn't been on our team the years that we won it. We got second with him a couple of times, but feel bad for the kid. He really wants that one, but
you guys win one recently though. Was it 2017? Could have sworn I saw that.
Yeah, last one we won was 2013, and then last year we fell into the bubble you guys did, undefeated in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Lost twice to Pete and Marco.
Yeah, that's miserable. That was one of the most miserable moments of my bocce career.
Yeah, we saw. It's tough.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. You did.
Tough. It's not an easy tournament, obviously. Got to have some luck. Got to have a good draw. It's tough. Any big tournament like that, it's hard to get to the end. And when you're undefeated in the end, you always think, well, they're not going to beat me twice. So,
right. And then you guys did win Wycliffe. What year was that?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. That's right.
Yeah.
Let me just add some additional context for the World Series because it does chat my ass.
Let's hear it,
please.
So I wasn't on the original team, the original Malachi Legal Eagles with Nick, Todd, and Eddie. Todd's twin brother Mark used to play with them for several years, and
who's this Todd? Do you get Todd's last name?
Todd Lanzi.
Yeah,
Todd Lanzi, and then Eddie Emanuel. That's Tino's father. One of the great 2 rollers that Taylor put in his top 10. Go ahead.
Yep, and Nicky, and then Todd's twin brother Mark Lanzi. They played together. I don't know how many years did y'all play together, Nick?
Yeah, 8 years. No, 10 years.
Several years. Mark ended up moving away, and then I got the opportunity to start playing with these guys 2011, 12. And so after my first year playing with them, my niece decided to get married in 2013 and chose World Series weekend. So I couldn't play that weekend.
Oh, the women, dude. Eddie
Emanuel's son, Santino, was gracious enough to fill in for me. And I think that year, I don't know that anyone scored more than 7 points against these guys, and they ran the table and won in 2013. I came back, I think, the next year, and we've played the last 10 years, and I think outside of 1 year, we haven't finished worse than 7th place. Twice we finished 2nd place.
Yeah, that year that we won,
This is-
Taylor, that was like your year this year. We ran through everybody, and we ended up playing Connecticut in the finals, and I think that was like 16-7. We just ran through everybody, kind of like what you guys did there for a while. But then that's the 1 year Paul didn't play with us, and he was pissed.
So okay, like we're gonna go right into a hot topic because we're just like there's other places that you can go on and we could talk about your childhood and where you started playing bocce,
Oh, sure.
and that's great. But let's just go right into this hot topic. So Paul, I talk about this during my streams because often somebody can't make it to a tournament, and are you rooting for that team to win without you? So like in this instance, like great that Tino got the win, right? But like how much FOMO, how much do you wish that like that could have been you? And then now that they show that they can win with him, like you're out. Like you're not going to be able to have that chance.
Man, it's a loaded subject. I think it depends. Tino's my boy, so I think it's a little bit different. He was playing with his dad. Like, I'm happy that he got the opportunity and they won. So there was really no FOMO or anything like that. I mean, I honestly was more upset with my niece for choosing that weekend. Like, it's
you place the blame on her.
It's always the 3rd weekend of July, right? It's not a surprise. It's always that weekend. So
Yeah.
I don't know why she chose that weekend. She ended up getting divorced. The guy's kind of a douchebag in my mind.
Oh my God! And then she got. Oh, I would never listen.
So this
Family
was
dinner,
like-
family
Getting
dinner.
off
She'd be
topic,
getting
getting
it,
off
man.
topic, But
Oh,
I know that happens a lot, right? This isn't the only time. There's been other examples where someone hasn't been able to make it. They get a fill-in, they
Right.
do really well. Then there's all sorts of conversation and controversy. Well, what do you do next year? That type of thing.
Yep.
Well,
Well, we haven't.
never really had that. I mean, like I said, I've known Tino a long time, and I was happy that he got to experience that.
Well, even with like Adelios,
win.
even with Adelios last year, like Marco typically plays on that team. They got to fill in, you win it, and then that's your team. So it's
so
like
what's Adelios doing next year?
Yeah, most likely going to run it back, try to get the 3 in
I
a
would
row.
assume they'd
try
run
to
it
get
back.
second.
I hope so because I'm going to try to have the bracket rigged so we can play them game 1. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. I'm actually being very serious. So yeah, I mean, I've talked about that game at length.
Rome brackets, they love putting our teams against each other early rounds in courts
Yeah.
that they don't want to play on. So it'll be perfect. You have a good
Dude,
shot.
like 5 years ago, I drew my dad the first game.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I don't know how it's possible. 130 some teams. I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
I played my dad's very first game.
So you guys did win Wycliffe 2 years ago. That's congratulations, hell of an accomplishment. We played you guys this year in Wycliffe.
What a great game.
After what's that?
What a great game.
Well, yeah, so I'm going to get to that one. So we actually won. I don't know if you guys know how it is we came to play you.
You won
we
four
saw.
games, like 13.
Did you see the game against Trepepi and them?
Yeah, I saw that game, and I saw the game where Anthony had last ball and he wanted to shoot the little one down, and Dante stopped him.
Against ABV, yes. Yeah. Against ABV, yes. So we had beat ABV. We played Pete and them. Tim was going to shoot the back wall per game.
How many 14, 13 games? Crazy.
What's that?
How many 14, 13 games?
14, 13, right?
Oh yeah, it was insane. I mean, that's just I wasn't surprised by it. We've been in a lot of close games. We're like used to it, but we were dead to rights in the Trepepi game until he shot the back wall, missed, hit the pill, went right to us. That was probably the craziest moment I had. I thought it wouldn't be topped. And then we're like, oh, so we get to play North Country Graphic. I'm thinking in my head, fuck, dude, these guys, man, they're killing everyone, man. Whoever wins this game is probably going to win it, right?
That's how I felt. I felt whoever won that game is going to win the tournament.
For sure. I know Palazzo was kind of hanging in the, waiting out there in the weeds, but I was like, I think we'll get them. So we're playing you guys, and I'm like, damn, whoever wins this is probably going to win it. My favorite thing about you guys is you play fast. I mean, Eddie, for example, that dude rolls or shoots a ball before you guys even finish getting off the court.
We know.
And that's kind of like how we play. This like let me ask you this question. I kind of don't want to go off, but how do you feel about teams that you play that literally take 5 minutes between each shot? Does that drive you nuts? Do you care? Do you have an opinion? Like, how do
Yeah,
you feel about the pace of play?
I feel that it's like golf, right? How much nicer is a round of golf when you're not waiting every shot?
Right.
Same thing with bocce. Now, there's obviously times that you have to discuss some things, strategy, especially in
Sure.
close games, when you're down balls, especially what you want to do. But every frame of that, yeah, it gets frustrating.
Yeah, 1-1, and the guy has a ball back, and they're at middle court talking for 5 minutes. What are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing? It's annoying. So anyway, so we play you guys. What a hell of a game. Didn't think what could happen to us before would have been topped. I want to talk to you about the last frame. Okay. I actually kind of forget how it played out. Like,
Yeah,
I can't believe it wasn't live streamed.
let me set up at least the last ball. So
Go ahead.
so BSB is in a point, and Anthony Caporecco has a ball back, and so does Eddie. And BSB needs 2 to go out, and it was a pretty amazing point. It was basically on the Paulino, and if you shot, there was a very small chance for it to go clean. If you hit it, there's going to be some Ricky going around. Most likely you would have had a ball. You had balls in the back. Most likely you had a ball covered in each area, and it would have been really hard for BSB to go out if you hit it. So Paul had come out onto the court and was basically like looking over it and wanted to call for a shot. And Paul, I know take me into you and Nick were out there. Yeah.
I think we actually wanted Eddie to shoot, but
you did.
He kind of called.
Yeah, so tell us about that. Tell us about that conversation, because we didn't hear, we didn't know. We were just hoping you guys weren't close. We were going to roll in and win.
Well, before we even I lost that game, and you can ask these guys.
You didn't lose the game.
Yeah, I did. Here's why.
You threw one bad point off the ball.
Here's why.
It doesn't lose the game.
That game was lost because of my last ball. I think, Matt, you threw one short a little bit. Whatever the situation was, I had a lot of room to come in, and I threw a 3-footer.
Mm-hmm.
If I make Anthony shoot my ball, we're up 2-1. And all Eddie has to do is beat that ball again, and the game's over. That's my fault. If I played pretty well that game, but that frame lost.
You did.
Lost the game for us. If I throw a good ball there, we win.
Right.
So that led up to Anthony's shot at the end. Go on, Danny.
Yeah, won't disagree. Won't disagree. I remember that moment, and I was like, that was the first bad ball that he threw. Then going into the last frame, though, going into the last ball, I could see you both going on the court, and we're discussing it, and it seemed like, again, from the crowd, myself, Jimmy Paisano, Danny Paisano, just looking over from the side, that you were looking to shoot the ball because of what I just said. It would have been really hard for them to go out if you shot the ball. What was your thought process? Like, don't put one close, don't cover?
My thought process was get on the court before Eddie shoots.
And
Eddie wasn't even thinking. Let's
be honest.
The call was a little bit in the back of my mind, but I wanted to get on the court before he just got up there and shot. Just so we can.
Total sense, because 2 frames before that, Eddie was like getting up to hit when he should have point, and then he threw like a 4-foot point. I think he like lost track of how many balls were back, because he plays very quickly. So that obviously weighed into. Let's think about what we're doing here. Obviously, the game could go either way. But I remember what I remember is Nick and I, talking about let's shoot, see what happens. Probably can't lose the game here if he hits it and there's a ricochet or scramble in the back.
I don't remember Eddie listening. I just remember you going, "Oh, okay, he's rolling."
Yes. So then he rolls literally a gorgeous ball. I'm like, well, last frame. Right, last frame.
Let's set it up for the people that weren't there because it wasn't streamed. It was the ball was on Paulino, and Eddie basically put it right on top of the ball. So Cap
right to the right
shoot
of it, a little bit to the right of it.
Yeah, a little bit to the right. He couldn't shoot. Yeah, right on top of it, in front of it.
Yes.
So it was a problem ball because it was in front. You couldn't shoot it, and because you could stick it. Wycliffe, Cap could, if he put it out to the side, even 2 foot, he could either stick or play on it, whatever. I mean, it was like just an unreal ball,
And the funnier part about it is, as soon as he rolled it and it stopped rolling, I took a couple steps on the court to go look at it to see what we can do. Anthony was already in his stance, ready to roll the ball. So I back away, the ball's rolling. I'm thinking the whole time, I'm like, well, 13-13 game again. Here we go, like down to the last frame. And I don't know how in the world he beat it. It has to be the greatest roll that I've ever seen in my life, honestly. How did you guys feel? I mean, outside of losing the game, about him making that type of roll in that moment?
You got 600 square feet of bocce material, and he puts it in the one spot where he could have gotten two. It was that's my thought.
I mean,
right.
There's nothing.
So,
I mean, yeah, it sucks losing.
Given the situation, and the courts aren't the easiest to point on. These courts aren't like they were 10 years ago.
Right.
They're not the easiest things to point on. So, given the situation, the court, where it bent in the tournament, one of the biggest shots I've seen.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
one of the biggest shots I've seen.
You'd rather lose that way than losing like on a bad luck Ricky, something like that. You'd rather just lose a great shot.
I think I told Matt this after the game. Everybody loves winning. We're all competitive. Some people more competitive than others, but we all love to win. But I like games like that. Those games, win or lose.
I agree.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is for fun. We're not retiring off bocce. This is all fun. And having games like that, they're cool. That was a great game. Everybody played really well.
Well, here's the thing, too. Like, you guys travel far to play these tournaments. We'll go to Rome and travel far and stay for the weekend because you want to compete and play, right? I mean, like, we do want to have fun, but you're going to bring a team that you think can go and win the tournament, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's the thing. So, like, we do want to have fun, but at the same time, we're going to win. You want to win. We know that. Everyone knows that. That being said, too, so, you guys are from New York, and Andy Sweeney is really kind of, we all know who Andy Sweeney is. He likes to. He calls himself the panel. Now, is this one person? Is this two people? Is this a group of people? Because the panel to me is like plural, right? I first have that question. What is he doing, and what is that? Is there many people that discuss this, or?
So I'm making assumptions here. I don't know for sure, but I do think when those original rankings came out, I think there was definitely input and influence from others besides just TD. But since then, it's kind of morphed into him being the quote-unquote panel, for whatever that means. So I don't know, but I do think he got some input because he doesn't. There were people on the different lists, and then he did the women. I mean, I know he knows a lot of people, and I know he talks to everybody, but I think there was input from somebody. I don't know who.
Right. Okay.
It's like a WWE character now. He's like the panel. He's like the Joker.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
He had. I mean, at JAC he had the
86 out of 93 at MVR, but I got a panel shirt. So.
What's funny is, we've all had to hear, or not so much hear, but watch him and read how great he was back in the day. And it's like, Landy, you went 0-2 at MVR, buddy. You went 0-2. I didn't even get to see you,
Yeah, we went 1-2.
You were on the team. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We did get a win. And we
were waiting for you. We were waiting for you. Yeah.
Tough, but we didn't close it out. So
yeah.
Tough weekend.
So one of the things he likes to bring up too is the fact that New York gets no love. Okay, in his eyes, New York never gets talked about. It's always Ohio, always PA. We wanted to get you guys on because we do feel like you are two of the best players that the entire state of New York has to offer. What do you think? Do you guys think that you're kind of underlooked? Do you think you're overlooked? What do you think of Ohio bocce? Things like that. Are there any teams or players when you travel out here that you're like, damn, I really hope we don't have to face them early? Things like that. Like, we want to hear your opinion on the bocce. In general.
How do you feel that Rome players like yourself, the top tier, how do you feel like you're looked at from our area? Cleveland, Youngstown, Koppel, Farrell, Newcastle. What do you think that our players think about you guys?
It's a good question. I honestly don't know what anybody thinks about me, to be honest with you. Personally, as far as what they think about like New York guys, um, probably the consensus is that they probably don't feel like they're as good as the guys out there, I would think. Um,
What about
I
you,
don't know.
Paul?
Yeah, I
What do you
mean,
what do you
I don't
think? What do you
know.
think our outlook is on
I
Rome
don't. I
in
don't
general?
really honestly put a whole lot of thought into it. I mean, I generally like to get along with most people, but at the end of the day, I'll be honest, I don't really care if someone doesn't like me or not. um, but I mean, I just think I don't know. I think the game is just different now than it used to be. Wycliffe is kind of what it is today because of what the World Series was in the 70s and 80s, right? The same conversation we're having about Rome could be said about Canada. At one time, those guys from Canada would come down 8, 10, 12 teams deep, and they would absolutely fucking murder teams. I mean, they play on 90-foot courts. They'd come down here and they'd shoot balls that are 40 feet away, and they'd stick. It's just bocce has grown so much in Ohio, PA area that it's kind of taken over and it dominates. We don't have as many young players that are up and coming in Rome, that y'all have in other areas. We don't have nearly the number of tournaments. Y'all have tournaments, multiple tournaments, some weekends that you could play, right? And so, I think this is a long-winded answer to a, very complicated question. We also have probably now a much more limited number of guys that actually travel to play in tournaments. You look at Wycliffe, we had, less teams this year, from Rome than we've had in a long time.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
say you guys are like kind of carrying the torch for New York right now, right? I mean, I think if you want my opinion, there are so many players right now. And, when we look at the New York traveling, it's not many of you, if at all. And a lot of people that play, that are newer that play, probably have no idea who you are. And some of that also has to do with the fact that, like, you know, they're always not there late in tournaments. You guys generally are. So someone like me and others that play against you guys, we know what you guys can do. Um, we just did a top 10. I told you guys earlier we did a top 10 ranking. If I'm not mistaken, Danny, I had one, two, three, four, like 6 New York players in the top 10 of
yeah.
shooting and pointing.
If you count Rochester too, and where Billy's
Yeah,
from, that adds some more. But like
yeah.
for the most part, it's just a few. And this is like I'm going to say this from our perspective, from my perspective. So this is like someone that's relatively newer to the game. So like 3 years of traveling, as opposed to playing in 2003. I didn't do that, Nick. So I haven't been playing for that long. I've been playing for only 3 years. And I'm watching now this big explosion that's been happening within our area. And so I think for a lot of players here, one, we got a lot more depth. There's a lot more players that are competing at a high level because of all these tournaments. So competition is breeding out the best. So like you either want to play this game or go 0-2 and have fun. It's becoming harder and harder and harder to win. So it's just breeding a lot of competition out of this area. And I think that coupled with the fact that a lot of your guys aren't traveling, so when we do see people from Rome, we're seeing like the best of the best. So I think there's definitely some like, okay, the best players of Rome that can't compete. But when we're going to Rome, this is someone that's going to Rome. I feel like going into that tournament, I'm like, most of those teams we could be able to, on paper, beat. We could just be able to, take them down. Getting into like the best teams from Rome, yes, of course, we're going to struggle there. It's their home court, and I know that they're like have a ton of talent, but it just feels like the depth from our area is just a little bit bigger. And I don't know if it's just from the number of tournaments or from the number of players that are playing.
I think it's both. I think
Definitely
it's
both.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, we don't have, nearly as many young people involved in our area, or if we're speaking more broadly, like I don't want to just lump it Rome like New York, right? I mean, we've got some Rochester people, we got Pete Russo, others, Mechanicville. So it's not just Rome, but in general, I don't think we have nearly the youth movement that supports the game like y'all have in your area. And then we have, like I said, limited tournaments, right? We have some teams that'll travel to some of the bigger tournaments. But again, y'all have tournaments every weekend, that have 24, 32 teams. And if you're consistently playing in those and you're playing against some of the best teams in your area, naturally you're going to continue to get better. I mean,
So do you think it's gotten harder now that the last few years that you've been traveling to Ohio to play tournaments? Do you think the competition has gotten harder from start to finish in these tournaments? Or you think it's kind of the same?
I mean,
he didn't let Popio score a point.
I think it's definitely gotten harder. I think there's teams today that I'd say 5 years ago, you could have a bad game and still expect to win. Whereas if you played those same teams today and you're not on your game, you're going to lose. So
right.
I do think, you always had your upper echelon teams and your teams that were going to bust your balls and be a tough game. But I think those next couple of tiers down have definitely gotten exponentially better, where those teams, have improved again from, playing consistently together. I know that was a topic on the first podcast about teams that routinely play together instead of constantly switching up rosters every other tournament. I think there's something to be said about that. And I think there's something to be said about playing, right? We've got guys locally that getting married, having kids, decide to take up golf and join country clubs, so we don't have as much as that as we once did locally.
Nick, how do you feel about the explosion in Ohio, PA? Is it like, oh, those guys are crazy? And girls, we have a lot of women that play around here. Or is it like, like find something better to do with your life than play bocce every single weekend? Are you like, man, I wish I lived in that area where there was that much competition? Like, what do you think the view is on our area?
We're just overrated? Or do you just think we're overrated? I mean, that's some people say that, man. Some people think we're just, a little overrated.
We're self-congratulatory. Yeah, we just think we're the best.
The first point I was just thinking about, the explosion. It's unbelievable what has happened out there the last 10 years. It's unbelievable. Like, I think Ron Dog told me he played in 48 tournaments last year.
That's probably accurate.
Yep.
I'm
34 this year. 34.
It's crazy. So when I started playing in tournaments when I was 15 or 16 with my dad, and there was a lot of tournaments, not as much as you guys, but between the two clubs in Rome, there was a lot of tournaments being played. And it got to the point where there were so many, people just took them for granted. And then they didn't play in the next one. Then it became routine, and then it stopped playing in maybe two of them. And then it kind of grew into that where tournaments now are pretty scarce out in Rome. So I just hope it doesn't happen with you guys. It comes to that point where it's just taken off so quickly. There's tournaments every week. And if you don't win it, it doesn't mean much because you got one next weekend. Whereas if you have fewer tournaments and you win them, it means a little bit more. So I hope it keeps going. It's just, as an outsider looking at it, it's unbelievable.
That's a good point there. The more you have, the less it means something. I do like that. I think that's a really good point. That's why I'm glad we do have some tournaments where we get 100+ teams, because that really will separate the men from the boys.
And if you ask Ron Dog, how many tournaments did you win last year? I won 4, but I played in 48. And if you ask Nick, how many tournaments did you win? Well, I won 2. What? You're terrible? No, I played in 7. So it's a different perspective, but the explosion out there has been awesome, and I hope it sticks. But at the same time, I hope the guys just don't start taking them for granted, and each tournament just means a little bit less,
Well, I think that leads into another topic. One of the things, there's burnout. So, one, we're trying to keep the game exciting and growing. And I think that Taylor and I both are, passionate, maybe sometimes to a fault on the court. I know I could be, but we're both passionate about the game. And we're also passionate about the growth of the game and want to see it grow. I'm very cognizant of burnout, because what happens is it's not so much, I think, Nick, that you could feel like you could just go to the next one and go to the next one. The problem is you feel like if you don't go to the next one, your team's going to find somebody else, win a tournament with them, going back to that comment, Paul, that I had. And then next thing you know, you're either on the sidelines or you're playing with lesser people. And so it's like it's really hard to keep up with the Joneses. You're trying to play because as you're seeing at the end of the tournaments, you're seeing players that have played for either A, a long time, B, a lot, or C, both. It's never just newcomers. It's never. You never see, there's very few surprises. Maybe you might think it's a surprise, but we would be like, oh, that person playing 5 nights a week. He's playing mixed. He's playing this. He's playing all these times. He's played 17 tournaments this year. Not surprised that he's made it to the finals this time. So I think there's like some burnout. I also think that just talking about, and we have to be very cognizant of that. I don't know what to do around that. I don't know. Maybe you just have to be able to take tournaments off and understand what sort of schedule is going to work best for you. Or there needs to be some sort of, as Taylor and I have been thinking about it, some sort of tournament of champions, that we have with Rocco that we're thinking about, where it's like, this is a season and, qualifying the season, there's going to be an end of the tournament and the rest of them are like fun tournaments to go play. But going back to what can keep the momentum, I think what's made Bocce so big for young people in our area is video. It's the streaming. People love hearing their name. People love watching their game. People love being part of, what's cool. It's just like the same thing as like what used to be like going on the local news. And then you would tell like all your family, guess what? I got interviewed because there was a house fire somewhere next door. And like you tell all your family you're going to be on. And now we're getting this like regularly scheduled programming around tournaments, especially in our area. And I think the young people love that. And so Taylor and I have been thinking about like, how could we be able to grow streaming and make that important? How do you feel about streaming? I'll go to you, Paul, first. Like, what do you think streaming has done to the game? Do you tune in to what we're doing over here with all the streaming, even on the cell phones? Do you think it's something that can be able to help the game, or do you think it hurts it?
It depends. If it's a tournament that I was in and I just lost, I have no desire to watch anything anytime soon until I calm down.
I love that. Love that.
If it's a tournament that for whatever reason, I wasn't able to attend, but I don't have anything going on, yeah, I tune in and watch them. I appreciate being able to see, friends playing or who's doing what. So, I like it. I've always supported it. Do I think that could potentially help us grow the game in Rome more than it is right now? I don't know. I'd be curious what Nick's thoughts are on that, because I think there's more obstacles in our way locally than just that. But probably for your area, again, with I think different population and things of that nature, yeah, I think it's done nothing but help. I mean, anytime a tournament's going on, there'll be post after post after post online, like who's streaming, like can someone stream this game on this court, and so-and-so's playing this team, why don't we have a stream, what the hell's going on? So clearly there's a demand for it, well beyond me and anything I give a shit about, but that's just my perspective. Again, like if I'm playing in the tournament and I recently lost, like I don't care. But I will say, even when I go out to different tournaments and stuff like that, my sister will be like, are they going to be streaming it? Let me know if they're streaming it, right?
Love that. I love it.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's been great.
Nick, what do you feel?
Yeah, I generally love the streaming. My wife especially loves it. I think some things don't need to be streamed. But overall, I love it. I think it's definitely helped. I have, 2 young kids. I can't travel all that much, so on weekends, every weekend I watch some sort of bocce online.
What don't you want to see on the stream?
I think someone had like the Wednesday night co-ed league finals from somewhere. Like, I probably don't need to watch that or want
Right.
to watch that.
And then,
But
of course, our game at Wycliffe just wasn't even live streamed. Can't find footage of it. It was a great game. I mean, unbelievable, right? I
Hey,
just can't make it up.
look at this legend behind PL3.
Well, it's kind of what
What's
happened to
up?
us 2 years ago when we won Wycliffe. It came down to the last frame, and somebody cut the internet cord at Wycliffe, and the stream went out for the last frame, so nobody was able to see the last
I
frame.
forgot about that.
It was
You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually,
you know what?
Actually, I'm really glad that happened because the only best ball I missed that entire game happened to frame that we went out. So,
Sweet.
So it was you.
I didn't miss the ball that game.
So you're the one that cut it. So Nick, I think that's actually a great point. Like, what's deemed worthy to be online. So what we're starting to see is this demand in our area, and I wouldn't even call it Cleveland because Cleveland players don't live stream. It is Youngstown, it is Koppel, some Farrell. It's really that. Like it is that it's only our area where we stream for each other. So like the things that I started doing has gotten picked up. I'm not the only one that was at the beginning. Levi Policaro from Koppel as well, and other people. But basically now it's gotten to the point where it's like I streamed for you. The next time that I play, doesn't matter what it is, even if it's a small tournament, even if it is the co-ed championship, someone's going to stream for me as sort of like now you can watch your own game. And so we're like really taking care of each other as a community. One of the problems is that, right now the advancement of the stream is only so much. So like the really high quality produced stuff from both BBN and Bocce Bros is sort of few and far between because of travel stuff. And, Taylor and I were like, do we see interest in streaming? Will other people watch? What does that actually mean? Is it like going from 50 people to 100, going to 200? Is this a game that can get picked up if we get some better streaming capabilities and then having the chance to either turn it on or off if you want to, like a TV channel? But you don't see anybody in Rome picking up a phone and going to do it. They can. Or maybe we are actually starting to see it now. I'm actually going to go back on my statement. I've actually started to see more people, not just Rome, like Billy Barnett, who's in a tournament a lot with Rome people. Russ Johnson, Russell's been doing it as well. And Fred Fox has been doing it a lot. It makes it a lot easier when your son's a superstar. You can follow him around and you have a lot of games to be able to do it. But we're starting to see a little bit of that filming content that's happening there. And it's just going to be interesting to see if that could be able to take the game forward. Question for you guys though. So the game that we play, for the most part has been like traveling in all these different courts. You've had to travel out of state to be able to play. We've gone from everything from dirt courts, hard true, synthetic, playing. You guys don't seem afraid to play of any venue, any place, any time. Sort of, the mentality that I believe our area prides ourselves on. What do you think is going to be like the way the game could grow? Do you think it's going to be more synthetic and maybe rules like PRV style, or do you feel like open bocce has a better chance in this country specifically to grow?
I personally think open bocce, preferably backboard dead, is a more popular way to go than like PVR. I find open bocce be more fun myself. PVR it takes a while. Some of the rules are a little wacky for me. But synthetic open bocce, I think, would be the way to go anyway for people like us.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think there's a time and place for PVR, but if we're talking solely grow the game, in the U.S., I don't think that's the answer.
What's your favorite form of the game? Like, is it 2-on-2, 4-man walk? You said synthetic backwall dead. That's your favorite form. What's your favorite way to play it if you could? Like, if you got to pick the way that you're going to play every time.
Playing 4-man, but with 2 on each end. I don't know what you call it, but two on each end. So it's more of a doubles format, but with 4 players on a team.
You like that format?
I do.
Do you?
I hate it.
Interesting.
I like being able to throw 2 balls a frame.
Yeah, and you
Right.
could talk shit to your teammates who aren't holding their weight. Hey,
That's happened plenty of times.
So Nick, during one of your answers, you had mentioned, you don't really play a lot of tournaments, or you haven't the last few years, correct? I mean, there's a lot of times, like I see Paul at a lot of venues. He travels a lot. I would say you travel a decent amount, right, Paul?
Yeah. Decent
Nick,
amount.
I miss you. I miss some of you guys. Like I don't see your team. The team you guys have, I think, is incredible. So it's you two, Tino and Eddie, right? But it's rare that I see you guys in any other tournaments outside of Rome or Wycliffe. What's up with that? I don't even remember seeing you at Molisani, Nick. Is that a place you'd like to play? Do you want to play? Like,
yeah, so I haven't played at Molisani since they redid the courts, and I also haven't been to Lorenzino's either.
right.
2 places that I really want to get to, especially Lorenzino's. And it's just busy, 2 kids, both in travel baseball, rec baseball, travel soccer, rec soccer. It's just busy. It's tough for me to get out. So I don't have a lot of free weekends. But those are 2 places that I want to get to sooner than later. But yeah, if I was single, no kids, stuff like that, I'd be playing a lot more. But
Well, luckily you can play to your 80, right? Right, PL3? Is that what your dad is? Your dad's 80?
Right. Yeah, my
Hit
dad's
balls at
turning
80
this weekend. Yeah.
Crazy.
So another thing too, like part of why I was mentioning, I want to segue into something else is, I have found a lot of success over the last couple of years. I've only been playing for about 5 years, like competitively. In the last couple of years, I've had a lot of success. And Sunday at Wycliffe, Sunday in Rome, those are literally the reasons why I play. Every team was good. It's competitive. I want to see the best. We want to play against the best. I know Danny does too. I personally, and this is no disrespect to any of the individuals that want to play the game and stuff like that, but my question basically is like, when you guys go to these tournaments, you want to have competitive games. Like, I don't find it fun to beat teams 14-2, 14-5, and the game ends in 20 minutes. Like, I hate that. It's like sometimes when I see Paul, like, and he's at a tournament, he's with Andy. No disrespect to Andy, I think he's a great guy. Whatever. I would much rather see you two and the Emmanuels playing together than not. Right. It's like that's like kind of my view on it. Is I want the competition. I want to see you guys. I want to play against you.
You beat us like in what 17 minutes in July?
Yeah,
That's well, I wasn't gonna listen. I wasn't gonna bring that up. You brought it up. I wasn't gonna bring it up.
It was 7.
This is what he does. He throws it
That
out
was-
to himself. Yeah.
I
That was
wasn't.
a snowball that just did not stop, and we all have those games. It just
You have those games
bad.
for sure. If we
You
played
guys
10
played-
times out there in Rome, dude, it would be. Listen,
we're
not-
5 and 5.
Right.
It's just one of those games where
well, I would
you
say
guys
7-3 our way, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, we all have those games. You just
Right, for sure.
snowballs, and no matter
Right.
what you do, it is what it is. And you guys obviously play good, but that was one of those games. But yeah, that was like 7 frames, 8 frames.
I remember seeing you guys play in Wycliffe before that. You played against Popio and those guys did not play that bad. And I think you just like beat them 13-0 or whatever. It was you killed them.
Yeah. How often do you step on the court?
Really well in Wycliffe.
It was like the perfect game. That was like the perfect game.
Our Sunday this year in Wycliffe was unbelievable. We played outstanding, and I knew between our game, whoever won that game, I thought was going to win the tournament.
So when you guys came off, Paul, you said this at Wycliffe because our tents were right next to each other, and you're like, and Tino said the same thing. I just think it's going to be really hard for anyone to beat those guys, Jose, Pat, Nico. Where did it change for you for that tournament to change over from them being the overwhelming favorites? They were sort of rolling through everyone to then all of a sudden, feeling like, hey, there's a chink in the armor. They could be beat because they beat BSB pretty bad, in the first game. And it just looked like it was theirs to have.
I think I mentioned that like after they spanked us because we played a pretty good game against them. Not perfect, but a pretty good game against them. And I think we scored, Nick? 3 points?
Yeah.
Ironically, we lost that game going the same way on the same court with Jason rolling in nearly an identical shot that Cap rolled the end of our BSB game. But that wouldn't have mattered. We got absolutely smoked. And, the way they played that game, I really didn't think anyone was going to beat them. Like, obviously.
But then we played each other, and you guys are agreeing that, or maybe it's just Nick, the winner of our game was going to at least go to the championship and possibly win it. So why that mindset changed?
So
I have a pretty good answer for this, too.
At that point, I think Palazzo had already lost. So they already had a loss. I think someone put them in the loser's bracket.
It was Ron Dog and Triv and them.
Yeah. And so the one thing about that team is obviously they're synthetic players, right? So it always comes down to, like, how well are they going to point on dirt courts?
Right.
They're going to hit. Like, Nico's going to hit. Jose's going to hit. They're going to replace some balls, change some frames. But it really came down to pointing. I think they started to have some struggles with pointing. I don't know if it was certain courts or whatnot, but, even before they wiped the floor with us, that was always like, well, playing on dirt versus synthetic is very different. But if they're pointing, like they are capable of, they're going to be very tough to beat. And I just think, they had a tougher game, I think, against Ron Dog. They played great. And, they struggled a little bit pointing, and I think that just carried forward after that. So, and, I think we collectively, to Nick's point, we're playing better on Sunday than we played on Saturday. Not that we played bad on Saturday by any means, but we really had things going early on Sunday, and I still think we played great against, you guys BSB, even though you beat us. So I think I had a higher degree of confidence, just the way we were playing Sunday. Nick, I don't know.
So let me ask.
I was
let me
so
ask you this.
surprised that they were.
Oh, go ahead, Nick. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was surprised that they were the heavy betting favorite going into that tournament.
That kind of was too, to be honest with you.
Because
wait a minute. Well, Pat gets to bet on himself. So you're betting on yourself too. It's not necessarily a public bet. You'd be a heavy betting favorite because Pat gambles a lot, has money, believes in Jose. Like that
they had like
part of that surprise.
They had like 38 or 40 bets put on him. So I don't know how many. Let's say he did half. So let's say there's 18 to 20 people that bet them. We all know pointing wins this game. The hitters keep you in the game. They save you, but pointing wins.
You already answered my question.
And when you look at the team, it's got Jose. He's got the best player in the country, but you got two guys that point on synthetic 90 foot, and they're coming to Wycliffe dirt courts. So going into the tournament, I didn't think they would win. I thought they'd come in like 10th through 14th, somewhere around there. But after they played us, they were pointing very well. And I said after our game, if they point like that, nobody's going to beat them.
Mm-hmm.
And they pointed like that for another game or two. And then, like Paul said, it started to slip a little bit. And they were getting out point. And that's what happened.
And that's what we did when we beat them. We just pointed. I mean, that was it. We were pointed. What do you guys think? That's a good segue because you mentioned it. What's the most important position on a bocce team, in your opinion?
I think leadoff point, but that's just me. I think it sets the tone for the frame.
It's such a hard question.
We want an answer.
You get to pick a perfect game from all four positions. You get to pick one perfect game from all four positions. Which one are you taking?
So I'm taking first pointer, but because that person's going to call a good game.
Yep.
But you can make a very strong argument. If you're playing backboard dead and your first hitter sucks, you're a ball down every frame. And you're dealing with a ball you got to hit. Third pointer, second hitter, you are 50-50 doing stuff. You're hitting half the time, you're pointing half the time. It's a tough spot. And second pointer is huge. I mean, very few teams have two solid hitters in a tournament. So if the first hitter is good, maybe the second hitter is not as good. If your second pointer is putting in points all the time that need to be hit, that is also huge. So it's such a hard argument to make. And depending on what position you play, you might be biased towards it. So maybe I'm a little biased towards it. But the first pointer who also calls the game, I think, is a very important spot.
So
And
Paul and
our
I are
two
both
teams,
Paul and I are
two
both
teams in
hitters.
Rome, our
Yeah.
Wycliffe team has a different lineup than our Rome team. And in the World Series, we come across play calling issues once in a while, which in Wycliffe, I think, Paul, in 11 games, we had maybe 2 real discussions
Yeah.
of different thoughts.
And some of that is, I mean, again, we have a comfort level of playing together and kind of understand like what we do. But yeah, I mean,
So it's such a hard, and I don't know what Paul would say. I think it's such a hard question to answer. But what do you guys think?
Well, so Paul said first pointer as well, and when Matt and I had our first episode, we talked about this. We both said first pointer. I will say, Nick, to your point though, the most pressure, I believe, is the guy with the ball back. Typically your second shooter, because they're just like always having to make hits or points or back wall shots or rolls that are in like this very tough position where the frame can go one way or another. Like you literally lose that frame, or it's the momentum point where we've all had points where we score 1 point and we lose the frame because we didn't get multiples. We didn't get a crooked number. There was like a 3-foot ball that the second shooter had to roll in on and didn't roll in. Like that crooked number is so important.
A differentiator of a lot of the good teams is having shooters that can point to. You know, when you have an opportunity to roll in for a second or third point, or you need a shooter to put a good point in.
Wish I had one of those.
Yeah, it's not me, but I shoot and miss so I can get out of the way. You know what I mean?
You guys would agree that team rolling wins tournaments, right? If you can't team roll, you can't win, right?
You can win a tournament without hitting. You can't win a tournament without pointing.
Here's Nick. You'll probably appreciate this.
When you're hitting like shit, it's very easy to quantify. So when you're a shooter and you miss 3 or 4, it's very easy to say, "Oh, you played like shit. You missed 3 or 4 balls." You can be a roller and throw 3-foot points, and then after the game say, "I played great because I beat 3.5-foot points that the other guy threw." So you know,
that's a good point.
Finally, some shade on these guys.
Listen, there's been some times where I've rolled a bad ball. Cap or Greco will step up and their ball that would beat my 4 or 5 footer that I threw, goes up and sticks the ball or hits the Pauline, changes the frame. Coincidentally, too, if Cap misses a shot and I have a 16-inch point to beat, I'll step up, I'll get his back, I'll beat it. Here's what I think, and I think Nick will appreciate this. Well, I agree that the second roller and second shooter, they're a lot of pressure, probably the biggest pressure ball. But I can also think there's been hundreds of times this year where I would roll my ball, okay, and my second pointer, my second shooter, and my first shooter didn't have to do shit, right? Because I took all 4 balls, or I took 3 balls. I mean, it literally sets it. There's never a time for me where I just get to have a free lunch, essentially. I'm either rolling the Pauline or I got to, right? I mean,
your first pointer, make it easy on me. I love it.
Right. Yeah. There's no other position, I think, in bocce, you can correct me if I'm wrong, where the other players literally don't have to do anything, right? Like there's times where they just need to roll in for extra points. I mean, there's no pressure on you at that point. Is there ever a time, Nick, where you can feel like it's the other way around since you're a lead pointer?
Yeah, when the other team rolls and I freaking dart one, you know? I dart one.
Okay.
You know?
It doesn't happen often, Paul, we know, but
no, I got to hit the ball first. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Paul. I think Danny and I had a really good topic in our first episode. We were talking about how it's really effing hard to win. And I think, was it this one recent one, or was it the first one, Danny, where we were talking about shit talking in bocce?
Yeah.
I really, really wanted to get to this question. How do you guys feel about the way the game has evolved in that sense, where there's a lot of people that like to chatter, they like to talk, like to run their mouth, like to string pull it and hikey when you miss? What's your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, you guys know me. You see me enough. I'm pretty quiet most of the time. When I get on the court, I'm very competitive. I'm very competitive. Most people probably don't think that. I'm the most competitive guy out there. just like you guys. I just show it differently, I guess. I'm just quiet that way. But yeah, I'm very competitive. I do get excited. I get excited for my teammates, stuff like that. But there is a lot of talking that I just is new to me because I didn't really grow up with that. So it's just something new to me. And yeah, people like Andy, who's always loud, and people like me who don't say a word. So people like both, I guess. But yeah, it's
Paul, what do
interesting.
you think?
I don't know, man. I don't know. You know, I'm
Does
I'm
it
a little
bother
bit
you?
older. It doesn't really bother me. I will say if like I'm playing bad or something like that, like, you know, I do have a bit of a temper and like some shit can piss me off at times. But it doesn't really bother me. I mean, people can do what they want to do. I think to Nick's point, it's just different for us. You know, we're a little bit older. We've been playing the game for a while, and you know, it's just not part of the way the game used to be. That doesn't necessarily mean it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, I watch some other venues, where it's like playing at Cameron Indoor Stadium around one court, and it's like wild. Like, Rush Johnson, for example, I believe went and played there, right? He's from
Oh yeah, I
Rome.
played against them.
Yeah, and he came back and just said what a great experience it was. Like, it was a ton of fun. People were talking shit, yelling, whatever. I think it's just different. So probably a time and place for it. What the right answer is or wrong answer is, I don't know. It's different. But
See, some of these
again,
old guys though, they talk shit in their own way. First of all, they
100%.
measure on the ball, they measure on the bottom of the ball. They're
Yeah, they're
talking shit. They're saying about how lucky you
they're
got.
walking
Yeah,
across the court
they
before
walk.
you get ready to do, standing right on your hip as you're trying to roll. Like,
How
there's
is
all
that
sorts
worse?
of bullshit.
How is that better? I should say than Stewie hitting the ball and being like Stewie. How's that better than someone walking across when you're trying to hit, trying to mismeasure a ball, doing the little shit that they do? Like, what's worse? Like, it's a louder game, I think, for a lot of us now, including myself. But like, why am I worse than anybody else that does their other shit that they do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember who posted it, but I think someone posted something about this on the comments or one of the things. Like, I think it's different, like when Stewie shoots and he screams or whatever after he makes a good hit or whatever. Like, fine, whatever, who gives a shit? It's different than I'm in my windup and someone behind the fence is screaming, "Miss it, miss it, miss it," as I'm getting ready to shoot, right? Like, so I think there's different context to it. I think same
Right.
as bullshit, right? Is you're getting ready to throw or whatever and you're trying to be distracting. That's different than after you make a great shot, celebrating with your team or yelling, whatever. I think they're two different things. I think one's a lot more disrespectful than the other.
So, Paul, you played against BSB a few times this year. Nick, so have you. I'm on that team. I would probably say you guys wouldn't argue that we're probably the loudest team in Bocce or one of the loudest teams, right? We have Anthony, we have Stewie, we cheer, we yell. How do you feel about playing us because we're on that topic of shit talking? Does it bother you, or do you feel like we still show some measure of sportsmanship? Like, what's your take on us and how we play? Since we played some pretty big games against each other, it makes sense to ask you guys this question.
Well, that's interesting, Matt, because our game during Wycliffe, I thought you guys didn't do any of that. And that was a very close, good game. And then I don't really remember you guys getting overly excited in Rome either.
They didn't
And
need
that,
to. We were
Oh,
yelling.
we did. No, we
We were
did.
down 7-0 after
When Stewie hit the Pauline, it was like
oh, my wife's over here listening. She's like, yeah, they did.
so the second or third frame where you guys
Oh, I
rolled
do remember
four
that. Stewie
shit
hit the little one
balls.
down. Yeah.
You guys rolled four awful balls, okay?
Yeah,
And
I
my
remember
ball
that
was
frame.
3 feet. And we somehow
Mine
had
was
you
the
guys in
closest,
for 2
though. For the
points.
record, mine was the closest ball.
It was the closest. We somehow fumbled that, and you guys were in for 2 points. And we're like, Stewie has the last ball. We're like, fuck it, let's just shoot the Pauline. He shoots the Pauline. As soon as he hit it, I fist pumped and screamed, right? And it was like right after he hit it. Like, does that stuff bother you? Did it bother you that I did that? Is it like, or do you just feel like that's just
So
part of the game?
I'll be honest with you. A lot of the times when someone does yell after a shot, just like in the middle of a game, they make a hit and they yell. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, calm down. Like,
Okay.
number one, it's bocce. Calm down. You made a shot. So I
For
do
the
think of
record,
that
he
a
tells me
lot.
to calm down at least 15 to 20 times a game, so it really doesn't mean anything.
Say that again, Paul.
I said, for the record, he tells me to calm down 15 to 20 times a game. So
Well, you need a therapist, so that's why I
That's
have to
because
keep telling you to calm down.
he doesn't understand the psychology of shooters.
Yeah,
That's
but
why. Like,
yeah, to be honest with you, some of the stuff at times I'm like, okay, whatever, you made a shot, no need to do that. But other times there's a place for it. But yeah, like going back to our Wycliffe game, I don't think you guys did it all, and maybe it was because you felt bad doing it, or you didn't think of it, or
Well, I could tell you why. There's a couple reasons. I think
because the games
one,
before that you guys were jacked up.
well, there's some also underlying things with that, and it's not so much me. It's more like Cap and who he's playing against. But you guys are like awesome players. The respect level is there, so we certainly don't want to show you up. And I feel like you guys would feel the
I'm
same
sorry.
way.
I'm gonna have to disagree here. I don't
Go
think
ahead.
it's
Let me
about
hear
the
it.
respect. I don't think it's about the respect level because you play against plenty of great teams where Cap talks shit. I think it's because it doesn't get in Nick's head, and if it got in Nick's head, then you would have been talking shit. End of
No,
story.
I don't. I think
I just don't.
if you
I
were to
just don't
ask
believe it.
Anthony that, I think that he can get it. He feels like it
We're
doesn't
gonna.
matter. He can get
Well, what
anyone's head.
fair enough, but like I think that Anthony picks and chooses his battles, and there's a reason why he talks shit to certain players, and the reason why he doesn't to others, because
Yeah.
and it's a reason why I don't talk shit to Anthony because I know it fires him up, and I would scream to maybe Nick Scerra and maybe get him a little bit annoyed because it's a little bit different than if I'm doing it against Capagretta, who's going to stick it right back in my ass and stick the ball and look back at me. So
Yeah.
I just respectfully disagree. I don't think it's because of the respect they
I
have
think
for
I
these
think there's a
guys.
little bit of both, but there's definitely some respect level there on the opponent that we're playing. And sometimes too, when you're trying to get yourself going by doing all these other antics, it might mess you up in your own game. Now, Cap, it doesn't really do that with much, but I get it. I did want to point out too, though, Paul, as I saw this, I watch you. I know when you miss a ball, you're yelling at yourself. Like I can hear you talking shit to yourself, and you could get really heated. So you had missed a ball in our game. You might have hit your own ball out. I can't remember the scenario, but that next frame, that next shot that you had, I think you fired that ball harder than you ever fired a ball in your life. And when you hit it, that thing
Was that one in Wycliffe?
cracked. It was in Wycliffe, yes.
Wycliffe, where you go? You said
Yes.
something like,
I
down.
went over to
What
Cap.
did that ball do to you, or something like that?
Yes, I said to Cap, I'm like, dude, I think he took all his frustration out on that last ball because you fired it, dude. I mean, you could have killed somebody, honestly. I mean,
All right,
fired
boys,
it.
we only got 2 more questions left. We have another guest coming on tonight that we're filming for a different episode, and we got to be respectful to her. We're going to be interviewing Courtney Strickland. Very excited to have her on from Chicago,
Nice.
get her perspective on bocce. So I got the last 2, Taylor. I'm taking them both for us. One is just looking for a list of players, to name it. It doesn't have to be top 10, whatever. Just up and coming players from your area, from Rome, Mechanicsville, wherever. Just like who should we be watching out for? Who's like young, hungry, playing the game that we're going to start seeing, maybe traveling, or maybe when we go to Rome, we should be looking out for. Who's next?
Well, I mean, obviously, Nico's on the list. I mean,
He's not even next. He's already here.
Yeah, I mean, he's already here. Honestly, we don't have a ton of younger people like I talked about. We have some though, like Zach Cortez. He came to Wycliffe. He's playing in leagues, throws tons of balls after leagues. Has definitely gotten better. Joey Izzo. Tino, even got away from botch for a while, right? Fire department, took up some different hobbies and things of that nature, but has made a lot of comments that, he wants to start playing a lot more. Him and I obviously are coming to a few more tournaments together than we used to. So it's nice to see Tino back. then we have a lot of other folks like, Mike Augusto, Mason, those guys that, got into it kind of hot and heavy and then lost interest, started playing some golf. But, again, they're starting to come around a little bit more frequently. I think a few of them are actually coming out to Molisani. So it's
Nice.
good to see them coming out there.
And just a little tidbit there, real quick. You mentioned Mike Augusto and Mason. They made my list. They made my top 10 list. So, like I said, New York was well represented.
They played good there.
Yep.
Nicky, we missing anybody?
They're solid, yeah.
No, I think Paul pretty much nailed it.
I was watching those young guys from Rome. It was, I think, Zach, Joey, Mikey P, and
Mikey
one
P,
of the
Mikey P.
and there was a fourth one. I can't remember his name. I'm
He just
sorry,
beat
but
me in a singles tournament, so he's playing a lot again. Putting in the work and has definitely gotten a lot better. This is tough because I don't want to leave anybody out, so no disrespect.
Yeah, sure.
To anyone that I'm not,
yeah, you're just put you on the spot. But I was watching those young guys. I was watching those young guys from Rome, and they were playing against Felice and Natali, and then I think it was Marco and Pete Russo. I think Nick. Maybe I think that was the four.
Oh yeah, court 9.
I had to leave to go play. I was watching them on court 9, and I was cheering for them because we became friends from over the years, and like they were hanging tough with them. They were beating them. They should have won. I left while they were winning, and they had a good showing there. But it's nice to see some young players from your area starting to travel more too. And then, so last question, and this is something we're going to ask every single one of our guests. So, like to each of you to answer individually. So, for a championship winning team, what percentage, if you had to put for luck? And that could be luck of the draw, luck of the games. What percentage do you need of that versus skill of playing, game calling, etc.? What is it? 50-50. What would you pick for championship winning team? What do you need?
I would probably say 50-50, or maybe 60-40. 40 luck.
40 luck.
Put it this way.
Paul?
Anybody who says you don't have to be lucky doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, again, I could be really long-winded with this answer, but I think it depends, right? Is it a tournament that's got 120 teams where obviously the draw matters and, your road to going undefeated to Sunday could be very easy or it could be really difficult? Or is it a team of 16 high stakes where every single team in the tournament is just extremely
So you're saying luck plays more into play the larger the tournament?
I think so. I think
because of the more games.
I think the draw is a bigger factor.
So I'll rephrase my question then. To win a major tournament, Rome, Wycliffe, the Big Molisani, Carmstrong, what do you think the percentages of luck that you need?
I still think it's like 75-80% skill and 20% luck. I mean, it's very hard to win any tournament, and it's getting harder because more and more teams are getting more competitive. But I will say in any tournament that I've won, any tournament, majors, whatever, there's always a game or two that comes down to a ball bouncing one way versus bouncing another, and that makes or breaks winning or losing that game. So I definitely think that luck's a factor in it, especially if you're playing backboard live and anything goes and anything can happen. But I still think it's greater than Nick's answer. I think it's greater than 50-60% because you're seeing a similar top 10 or a similar top 15, and within that top 10 or 15, I think that's where luck and a bounce going one.
Well, you guys won Wycliffe a couple years ago. What percentage was it that you won it based on skill and luck? I mean, that's a simple.
We could have lost game. What was it? Game 2 or 3 against Jose.
Yeah,
right?
We got lucky.
We got lucky. Game 2 or 3 against Jose. He played with Pete Melorano. It was a close game. We were dead to nuts. They stuck 3 balls. Tino put a great ball in, probably a foot in front of the Paulino. Pete doesn't hesitate, jumps up, smokes it, hits the ball into the Paulino, and it goes down in its game. If he hits the ball clean, they win. He happened to hit it so solid, it went to the Paulino. We got 2 or 3, and we went out. And that was our springboard. Now, we lose that game.
Yeah.
It's probably
So,
a completely different outcome.
Let me change my answer. When I gave the 60%, 40%, that was more towards the 100+ team tournaments.
Mhm.
If you're talking regular bocce, like take a bocce game or a couple of games that make up like a 16-team tournament, then it's probably 80-85% skill, 10-15% luck.
Fair
So
enough.
my high numbers for that luck were based on the World Series, Wycliffe, because the draw is a lot of it. And to win it, you have to win all your games, and some of those games come down to luck.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? What's your answer?
Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go?
Go ahead. You go.
All right. So, Wycliffe, we played a lot of games. I would say we were very fortunate in a lot of those games. I'd say in that specific, I think it's tournament based. There's tournaments that we played where there wasn't any amount of luck that could go your way that was going to stop us from beating you. There's also other games where like we didn't get a couple of these breaks, we were going down. So I think that in a whole for an entire season, I would probably say skill is eventually going to triumph over you. You can get over like having bad breaks and some luck if you have enough talent. The teams that don't are the ones that can't. They'll win some games throughout the tournament, but then lose. Right? That's kind of how I measure it. I'd say it's probably 80% skill, 20% luck. I wouldn't go any lower than 80% skill, though.
Yeah, over the course of a year, definitely 80% skill.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. But just one tournament with that many teams, I think a little bit more luck. But over the course of a year, yeah, it's probably definitely
For
a
sure.
good
For sure. Right. Good,
Yep.
Danny. I want to hear your answer on this.
So, agree with you guys. The bigger the tournament, I was referring to like the big tournaments, and I think in those, first of all, it's like the World Series of Poker. It's like no one's surprised for the most part on who's there. Like there's always like one or two sort of surprises, but like even then a game of luck, skill always triumphs. And so I'm not usually surprised in the big tournaments who's there at the end. It's like everyone like is a household name to me. I would say that in a larger tournament, luck comes more into play. And if your bracket, like if I didn't play BSB game 2 in Wycliffe, I don't know where we would have went. I felt like we played our first game sort of flawless. And it was like that one team for a couple of us that like it was get over the hump game that we needed to get over the hump, didn't get over the hump. And if we would have just had one more game that Friday, just feeling so good about ourselves going into Saturday, like I wonder where we would have took it. So I would say like you need at least like 20% luck between the draw, the breaks. If someone doesn't hit their own ball, but yet it still worked out for them, like those stuff need to happen. But I think all of us would agree it's how you react to luck that really is the making of a true champion. And I think all the champions, why they have talent is because they can deal with the bad breaks. They can handle the average shot. They can handle the average game from somebody and be able to make up and be able to win those tough games. And that's how they get it. That's how they get the ship.
Well said.
So I appreciate everybody joining us tonight. We got to sign off. We got another guest. So this is Respect the Line. We got guest Paul Lewis III, PL3, and we got Nick Scerra coming to us from New York. This is Matthew
Look
Taylor
forward
and
to
Danny
seeing you guys
Catullo.
soon. Hope to see you guys soon.
See you later.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, fellas.